When daybreak came, we were zooming through New Jersey with the great cloud of metropolitan New York rising before us in the snowy distance. Neil had a sweater wrapped around his ears to keep warm. He said we were a band of Arabs coming to blow up New York. We swished through the Lincoln Tunnel and came out on Times Square. Oh damn, I wish I could find Hunky. Everybody looks sharp. See if they can find him. We all scoured the sidewalks. Good old gone, Hunky. Oh, you should have seen him in Texas. So now Neil had come about 4,000 miles from Frisco via Arizona and up to Denver inside 4 days with innumerable adventures sandwiched in, and it was only the beginning. We went up to my house in Ozone Park and slept. I was the first to wake up. Late in the afternoon, Neil and Luann were sleeping on my bed, Al and I on my mother's bed. Neil, battered, unhinged, trunk, laid sprawled out across the floor with his socks sticking out. A phone call came from me from the drugstore downstairs. I ran down. It was from New Orleans. Bill Burroughs, in his high whining voice, was making a complaint. It seemed a girl called Helen Hinkle had just arrived at his house for a guy named Al Hinkle. Bill had no idea who these people were. Helen Hinkle was a tenacious loser. I told Bill to reassure her that Hinkle was with Neil and that most likely we'd be picking her up in New Orleans on the way down to the coast. Then the girl herself talked on the phone. She wanted to know how Al was. She was all concerned about his happiness. How'd you get from Tucson to New Orleans? I asked. She said she wired home for money and took a bus. She was determined to catch up with Al because she loved him. I went upstairs and told Big Al. He sat in a chair and had a worried look. All right now, said Neil, suddenly waking up and leaping out of bed. What we must do is eat. Eat at once. Luann, wrestle around the kitchen to see what there is. Jack, you and I go downstairs and call Alan. Al, you see what you can do? Straighten up the house, okay? I followed Neil, bustling downstairs. The guy who ran the drugstore said, you just got another call, this one from San Francisco, for a guy called Neil Cassidy? I said there wasn't anybody by that name. It was Carolyn calling Neil. The drugstore man, Sam, a tall, calm friend of mine, looked at me and scratched his head. Jeez, what are you running here? An international whorehouse? Neil tittered maniacally. I dig you, man. He leaped up into the telephone booth and called Frisco Collect. Then we called Alan at his home in New Jersey and told him to come in. Alan arrived 2 hours later. Meanwhile, Neil and I got ready for our return trip alone to North Carolina to pick up the rest of the furniture and bring my mother back. Allen Ginsberg came, poetry under his arm, and sat in an easy chair watching us with beady eyes. For the first half an hour, he refused to say anything, or that is, he refused to commit himself. He had quieted down since the Denver doldrum days. The Dakar doldrums had done it. In Dakar, wearing a beard, he wandered the back streets with little children, who led him to a witch doctor. They told his fortune. He had snapshots of crazy streets with grass huts, the hip back end of Dakar. He said he almost jumped off the ship like Hart Crane on the way back. It was the first time he was seeing Neil since they parted in Houston. Neil sat on the floor with a music box and listened with tremendous amazement, and the little song played, A Fine Romance. Little tinkling, whirling doodle bells. Oh, listen, we'll all bend down together and look into the center of the music box till we learn about the secrets. Tinkly doodly bell, wee. Al Hinkle was also sitting on the floor. He had my drumsticks, and he suddenly began beating a tiny beat to go with the music box. We could barely hear it. Everybody held their breath to listen. Tick, tack, tick, tick, tack, tick, tick, tack, tick, tick, tack. Neil cupped a hand over his ear, mouth hanged open, and he said, ah, wee. Alan watched his silly madness with slitty eyes. Finally, he slapped his knee and said, I have an announcement to make. Yes, yes? What is the meaning of this voyage to New York? What kind of sordid business are you on now? I mean, man, whither thou goest? Whither goest thou? Echoed Neil with his open mouth. We sat and didn't know what to say. There was nothing to talk about anymore. The only thing to do was go. Neil leaped up and said we were ready to go back to North Carolina.